You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.
Hey, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Black Parents Aging. This is Olivia Smith. I am in the host chair today. Nicola's out. She's on vacation. And today we are going to revisit something that we've talked about earlier on in our podcast. We've referenced it a lot in other podcast episodes, and that is having those critical conversations with our aging parents. We're going to revisit that because it is so important. As elder law attorneys, we do a lot of work in this season of life. And of course, our goal is to help you navigate it with grace, dignity, and respect. And sometimes it can be hard, especially if you're having to face the uncertainties of so many changes at once. Now, first, let's talk about what we even mean when we say those critical conversations. And for us, it really means the big three, the hot button topics are estate planning, long-term care, and end-of-life plans. But you may also wind up having to talk about dementia and driving and problems with diet and mobility. And depending on the relationship you have with your parents, this can be really easy and a matter-of-fact conversation, or it can be very difficult. You know your parents, so you kind of already know what kind of conversation it's going to be. Now, what makes it even more difficult is sometimes these conversations have to happen over the phone, which is not ideal. But that just depends on where you live versus where your parents live. And then if you want to have it in person, sometimes that means that it will have to happen during the holidays, which is also not ideal. But if you are having to do it at a holiday get together, don't do it during a meal and respect privacy. Nothing goes well if we embarrass our parents or make them feel disrespected. And then you have to think about the family unit. So along with your parents' feelings, you may also have to consider the feelings of your siblings, step siblings, your spouse, your brothers or sisters-in-law, step parents, and other relatives. So while the conversation that we want to have is between us and our parents, there may be a lot of other conversations and follow-ups that are necessary. Remember that while there are a lot of opinions, what worked for someone else with their parents may or may not work for your parents. And along those lines, anytime that we have a lot of opinions, there is the possibility for huge disagreements, disputes, and dare I say it, lawsuits. And as elder law attorneys, this is not what we want. We are not trying to have litigation. What we want is to start as early as possible, plan ahead, and when we get to the stage where we're having to make decisions, we've already got it outlined, whether it's your will and trust or your end of life care. Planning ahead is the ideal scenario. And we are planners over here, so we're all about planning ahead. Now, we see some people whose parents, unfortunately, are in complete denial about aging, or they're in denial about maybe their declining motor skills or their mental health. We also see people who keep their children in the dark completely about their plans for their estate. And that makes these conversations really emotionally charged, and they can be extremely hurtful. And if that's your situation, then this may be a more difficult conversation. I always try to remember that a lot of our parents and aging loved ones come from a time where the things that we want to discuss and kind of get out in the open are considered very private. And it has been their practice to keep private things private. And that means even from us as the child. And so I don't want us to go in and take these things personal. We are really challenging the way that they have done things for so long. So we have to come in armed with patience and understanding. That's the first thing. So now let's get started with the 4 tips to better talk to your aging parents. Number 1, have conversations when imminent decisions aren't necessary. That's huge. In other words, start early. It's much easier to talk about hypotheticals when you're not having to pressure someone into making an immediate decision. You may be able to talk to your parents, friends, or other relatives that have had to face driving, healthcare, or estate planning decisions. You may say that you're doing your own estate planning and thinking about your own options. Sometimes just asking for advice can be a powerful conversation starter. I think number 1 is key because when you have to make an imminent decision, there is a level of stress that enters the equation that makes everything more difficult. And it makes it difficult for you and your aging parent because at the end of the day, it's their life. And oftentimes when we are under stress, we don't show up as our best selves. So starting early and before imminent decisions are needed, I think is key. Number 2, listen. Let me say it again for the people in the back. Number 2 is listen. Everyone wants to be heard. Think about a time when you've been asked, what do you think? And then given the opportunity to share your feelings and opinions. It makes you feel valued and like you have something to say and that it matters. It's possible, highly possible, that you know exactly what your parents will feel about something. At the end of the day, you've listened to them at this point for 30, 40, 50 years. But before you get impatient, give them the floor. Allow them to have a voice and do not belittle them. We've talked about the compliment sandwich in a prior episode. You start with something positive, stick whatever the issue is in the middle, and end that bad boy with something positive as well. And you may simply end it by saying that how much better the situation will be now that a decision has been made. It may be as simple as not having something looming over their head, not having to worry about it later, or having a healthier or safer living environment right away. Now, number 3, don't say anything you'll have to apologize for later. Now, we say these are difficult conversations because sometimes the topics are difficult, and that gives the space for things to get a little heated. But we have to remember as the initiators of this conversation that we need to stay calm, cool, collected, bring our patience and our understanding with us. Now, we know you know your parents, and they may be stubborn and unwilling to face some of the facts that you feel are staring them in the face. And this may be the first conversation. Sometimes, though, it may be your 25th time trying to bring up this topic, and that may frustrate you. But treating your parents with respect in all situations is not something you'll regret. If things with your parents are so difficult that it's hard to have a critical conversation, talk to us and evaluate your option. You may want to have an elder care consultant or specialist, or even another family member. Sometimes we have clients and their children come in and we kind of facilitate that conversation happening. So there are other options. All we're trying to say is there are other options. So don't get frustrated and say something out of frustration or anger that you're going to have to try to apologize and make up for later. If things aren't going the way that you want them to go with the conversation, take a step back and assess your other options and then try something else. And then number 4 is choose your battles. And we've talked about this before as well, but it bears repeating. In any situation where we are working towards a specific goal or change, or even trying to negotiate an agreement, cut out the nagging. For example, matters of safety and hygiene should be prioritized over, for instance, social activities or hobbies. Think about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and how it's going to sound to them. If you think you sound nagging or irritated, it may be time to rework your approach or try a new one. And I think we've said this many, many times before. We always have to keep in our mind that this is supposed to be coming from a place of love, care, and concern. And so your parents or your aging loved ones should be able to feel that from you throughout the conversation. And the other thing I just want to add is it's not a one and done. It is a continued conversation. So this is how to get started. These are some tips about how to have the conversation, but please understand that it is an ongoing conversation. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope the discussion was helpful. We hope it made you think, and we hope maybe it made you pull out your planner and schedule when you're going to have your initial conversation with your parents or aging loved one. As always, we love to hear from you. We love feedback. We love comments. We love we love questions. Did something work for you that you like to share? Is there a topic that you want us to cover? Maybe you have some advice that you want to share with our audience. We're here for all of that. So you can always connect with us on our Facebook page and on Instagram. And we will talk to you again next week for another episode. Take care.
You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.